starting to flesh out the Whole Ons network here. We're used to doing virtual interviews, but this is our second back-to-back interview in the flesh.
In the flesh.
With pdballiet. pdballiet is his YouTube channel. And we've been hanging out all day, trying to philosophize to the best of each of our abilities, and I guess to try to reach something beyond us as individuals, a truth that we can all agree on. We're still working on that one. But I think what we wanted to talk about was the Socratic Method, right? A lot of times philosophy is taught in school as if you can learn a series of logical principles that will, if you compute them right, provide you with the truth. And those set of principles, it's already finished and completed somewhere. You think Socrates would like that idea, or are we defending philosophy from his perspective?
I think one of the rules of philosophy is to question its own rules.
Right.
And I really agree with several philosophers who say the goal of philosophy is not to answer the question being asked, but to find the right question.
Yeah.
And to, in trying to answer the question, realize that that's not the question you should be asking at all.
Right.
And so, I mean, if one of your rules is question all the above rules, including this one, then...
So that's what's valuable about the Socratic Method for you?
Well, that makes it infinite. I mean, it's never ending.
Maybe?
Recursive might be its shadow. It could be infinitely recursive, but I would say productive Socratic Method is not recursing.
Somewhere.
It's interesting you say productive. Like, I want to know, in a practical sense, when it's productive, when it's actually, and when it's the opposite of productive. Has it been that for you? Have you ever used it in a situation that's become actually the opposite of productive? Have you ever felt that way? Is there like a practical aspect when to use it?
I mean, well, this is like asking what are the prerequisites for an ideal environment to achieve like Habermasian communicative action. You know, how could we get...
Is the internet ideal for that, you think?
No.
So how do we use the internet in a way in which real communicative action can take place?
Well, first we need to find a real big intimacy that's totally absent from our physical lives right here and now, let alone on the visual of like a computer screen.
Well, that's the motivation behind recording real conversations.
Yeah.
Not just one face on a screen, but
right.
People in the real world having conversations that they want to share with others who couldn't be present.
I mean, screens are in the real world. It's just we already see each other superficially to the degree that it's functional in a society where when you're walking down the street, you don't notice anyone around you as someone familiar or someone you know, and you're saying hundreds of people. I mean, to survive, you have to accept the level of
superficiality.
Yeah.
I guess in a city,
it's
especially.
It's a survival mechanism. Yeah, it's a psychological survival mechanism. You can't really walk like 0.01 miles an hour and try and meet everyone.
You talk about boundaries and being able to take a perspective that can kind of transcend boundaries. How much of you like walks with boundaries, and how much of you doesn't? Like in a sense, like
boundaries are like rules, right?
Yeah. How much? So like, what's it like through your first person? Like how many practical boundaries do you kind of follow, and how many do you just let dissolve?
Well, I guess you'd have to redefine boundaries exactly.
Well, it's how do you define boundaries?
I guess you could say a boundary is an identification. You know, there was that one, I forget who wrote this, but they said where you've lost your sense of humor is where your attachments are. Yeah. So notice where you've lost your sense of humor, and that's where you've grown attachments.
Interesting.
Which is interesting.
Right, if you can't laugh about it.
But everyone has a different sense of humor as well.
Right.
So you can find things humorous in a way that might be unrecognizable to other people.
But there's such a thing as a good sense of humor, right? I mean,
well, what sense of humor is bad? I mean,
let's in the spirit of the philosopher like Wittgenstein, who said that language is just an everyday practical thing we use, right? We would say that
it's meaningful insofar as it's useful. It's
right. We talk about it as if it is possible to have a good sense of humor, independent of just...
So you mean a useful sense of humor? I agree.
In the sense that it makes people laugh, I guess, is the use of humor.
Well, that's the superficial use of humor, is to make people laugh.
What is it really doing?
Well, often it's to make people question. Right. It's to allow people to feel safe, to be uncomfortable.
Right, yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So it's like satire. You know, you look at someone like Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert, they're making fun of the government, those in power. We laugh about the absurdity of the structure of our system.
And how uncomfortable we are with its current situation.
So does the laughter accomplish anything, or does it just allow us to not deal with it?
Yeah, I've heard several theories about this. A friend of mine just wrote a paper about this, and how people, our generation especially, have become really jaded. And that actually that kind of laughter can create an apathy, where you go to watch Jon Stewart, you go to watch Stephen Colbert, and you almost feel like you're engaging in some sort of active political activism.
Right. You're just
You
sitting there watching.
know,
Yeah. You're rebelling against the system
yeah, you
by
think
watching
you're
this
contributing
television.
to something, like you're being
Yeah.
green or something.
Wow. Do you vote? Did you vote for
I
this
didn't vote.
election?
Yeah.
I voted. You probably voted. I know you.
No, I did not.
Oh, you didn't vote. Were you telling people? I mean, did you not vote?
I'm
because
not
you're
forcing
jaded?
anyone to vote or to not vote. No, it was the first election I could vote, and I was on my campus at school, and I didn't have the paperwork, and I couldn't get a ride to my district.
Well, I guess you're in a very liberal area. It's not as though Obama. It's not as though your vote was gonna like put Obama over the top.
Sure,
He
but I'd
was
like to
already-
exercise that. But yeah, that's another conversation.
Right, but I guess you say that our generation is jaded,
Yeah.
meaning we've kind of given up on the mainstream political system.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the easy way out.
But how do we, if we did want to change it, how could we do it? I mean, assuming
You care about something.
you care about it, but does that mean you care enough to be violent?
You don't have to care about it. You just care about something.
Change
To change apathy, you have to care about something.
Right. But what if you care so much that you're willing to start bombing government buildings or something like that?
Well,
Is violence ever productive, or does it always just muddy the waters?
I wanna keep us a little more focused overall to the topic of this conversation. But
Which is the Socratic Method, or what is the topic?
sure, yeah,
Okay.
that's where we begin. But if you want to talk about people resorting to violence, I mean, that's a means of communication that's very crude. It's been around for a long time.
Socrates was in war. He fought a war.
Sure, yeah, he was supposed to be very brave, in fact.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. But what does that have to do with anything?
Well, the question is violence ever good?
Well, again, with the question of good and evil, isn't it?
Well, no. Well, what if there's only good, but there's also
I agree with
there's
Paul on
violence, right? Is
Right,
violence a
and
privation
good is
of
just-
good, or is it
Is it the what of good?
a privation, like a lack of good, or a corrupting of goodness? It's not really anything other than goodness. It's just not goodness.
Well, there's no such thing that exists outside of goodness, in my opinion. Everything is just, that's why there's no, for me, ontological evil. There's just shades of what we could call health. And everything alive is, at this moment, surviving, or survived, by definition that it's alive right at this moment.
So it's good in that sense.
So in that way, it's health. Everything that's alive is, at least to some degree, healthy.
Right.
Total non-health we could call death, which you don't say that thing is unhealthy, it's dead. No, you say it's dead, there's no state of unhealthiness there.
I could see some of our viewers just screaming and want to say, like, what if it's a suffering? It's alive, dude. Let's just end it and get it to like that. What if it's like a suffering alive
So
thing?
like
Does it
euthanasia.
mean to put it out of its misery?
Yeah, some people. I mean, how much?
There's
of you
there's a
is-
Zen
is
story.
hungry?
There's a Zen story about that. It's a good question.
I just want to know, how do you grapple with this? Like, is it appropriate?
Would you
Is
want to
it
live
not?
if you like
Yeah,
were
there's-
paralyzed or whatever?
I think, that's a really hard question to ask. It's
Yeah.
very
It's one of those-
speculative.
Well,
but
would death be good in that situation?
see, no, I mean, are you saying is there ever justification for suicide? Is that what you're saying?
Or
That's-
euthanasia is a kind of suicide. It's a little different, but
Sure.
yeah.
I would say no. I think
You think there's evil, or is it just an illusion? Evil is just a lack
like
of
you could have a
goodness.
room with evil in it and no good in it. Like you could be like, hey, evil, like put you in a room.
And
I
it
mean,
could be
does
related.
it ontologically exist
If
as
you,
a
if
topic?
you look at it like a spectrum of light, then no, I don't think there's. I think it's just either light's present or it's not. But if you look at it as like a cosmic play, there needs to be,
An antagonist.
Yes, it needs to be protagonist. They need to be opposites. So it depends on where you're coming from. How poetic are you? More spectrum-like than I agree 100%. More play-like than I do think there is good and evil. And there are these opposites, and they do.
But I mean, in a play, the good is just as much a caricature as the evil.
That's right.
the protagonist and the antagonist are like.
And so it's really one thing. It's really one
It's
quality.
the one play.
Yeah. Well, they're two polarities of the same magnet,
Mm-hmm.
and you're feeling the magnetism, but it's one magnet, two polarities. So you say good and evil as if they're two, shall we say, autonomously existing entities.